You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in the space. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started today.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and today we have a surprise guest. And surprise is not because we're surprised to see him, but because we see him for the third time on this podcast, and we just like everything that he's doing. And this is Yang Shi. He's a friend of ours, and he's the co-founder and CEO of VetSnap, who brings over 8 years of invaluable experience in the veterinary industry. His journey began with a prominent role at NBA, where he spearheaded technology and IT initiatives for the first 5 years. Formerly worked in electronics and satellites and management consulting before discovering the joys of working in the veterinary world. Yang loves good conversations, good friends, good food, and good bourbon. Yang, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Really
I think
appreciate
you're
being
I
here.
think you're the third best person in the world for this podcast. You have more experience than anybody else other than me and Ivan. So it's really good to have you here.
Thank you.
So awesome. So Ying, what's new with VetSnap? Give us the update.
So yeah, it's been a little bit over 2 years now, right? We went into the market January of 2022. It's been very humbling and also very fantastic, just the amount of traction we've had. We've now crossed the barrier. I think we have over 1,000 customers now. We have done countless webinars, educational webinars, to further the awareness of the importance of compliance. Our team's growing. We have more engineers than before. And I'm very excited today to be with you guys because I think you're going to be the first that we're sharing about VetSnap lockers. So we are getting into the space of physical inventory control. We've always been in the software space, and we've had so many customers ask us, what can you do for us in terms of helping us control our control drugs? So I hope I get a chance to give a little bit of a preview there as well, and looking forward to having people visit us at VMX to get a glimpse, a sneak peek.
That's so exciting. You've gone from a software business to a hardware business. I've got 150 questions. I'll start with one. Besides customer demand, what made you want to be in the hardware business? That's a scary business for a software guy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So like you read my bio. So I started off my career after college in the hardware slash embedded systems business. So very much aware of the dangers of doing any kind of foray into hardware. I mean, the development cycles, the amount of capital you have to deploy just to get like a first draft version out is insane. Like we would be bankrupt within the month of trying to do something like that. However, we are not getting into hardware. We can dive into a little bit deeper later if we want. We're not getting into hardware the way that I think people expect us to get into hardware. We are not making our own hardware. We are finding a solution that fits within. And if you recall, our whole philosophy of VetSnap is about not disrupting the hospital flow, but trying to enhance it, automate it, make it easier for people to stay compliant within their current processes. We are partnering with third-party hardware vendors in order to create points of control, points of access for their existing locked cabinets, places where they're keeping their controlled drugs. So, when I say we're getting to hardware, we are not personally getting to hardware. We're developing the software that's going to unlock, no pun intended, the ability for our hospitals to control their controlled drugs.
Can you walk us through what is that going to look like, or is it too early to uncover the secret sauce? Like what is the workflow going to look like, and what the vet is going to experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit early because we're just getting into the initial pilot stages coming up in a month or two. But we believe the way we're going to do it is if you think about an existing hospital and where folks might have, one or two keys that they carry around them in order to lock up their controlled drugs, where we are getting into it is we are replacing that access point with a smart lock, a smart device that allows the hospital manager to provide controlled access to any number of folks that they want to give access. Now, this could be by, permissions by roles. This could be permissions set to specific locations in the hospitals. And no longer are they worried about, like they're doing this trade-off. Should I leave my key near there so if someone needs to access it, they can? But then you lose control of who actually touched your control drugs. And then you forget to bring forget to leave your key when you leave at the end of the day. So someone's asking for your key and you got to turn around and drive back. We're creating a way to control access by controlling who has access to those keys at the hospital. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I know it's very kind of like
no, it
abstract,
totally
and
makes sense.
we were learning. The secret sauce is we're learning.
The,
We're going to see how it works at the hospital. We're going to evolve our software to that.
So immediately I start, when you're talking about this particular workflow, I start thinking about the lock cabinets that are available on the market. Is this something that you're thinking of improving with the software plus the smart lock? And is there going to be an easier access to it? Different price point? What do you see yourself optimizing over those?
And can I add a little piece on the end there? And what does it look like? Is it just a smart lock to an existing cabinet? Are you partnering with smart lock companies? Or you're partnering with cabinet companies? Like, give us a little bit more.
Yeah, we're partnering with a third-party integrator that's going to allow us access to select a variety. Like, there's thousands of options out there in terms of access control, and we've picked what we prefer. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 different varieties. We started off with if you're familiar with like an Airbnb key lock, where like you keep the key inside it's almost like when your realtor goes somewhere and they need to open up a house, there's like a key lock somewhere. We're starting with that because it's the most flexible. It takes the least amount of change. And then we're going to expand into door locks and then also into a safe, like an actual safe that can be open and closed. So we are partnering with third party and we can access like literally thousands, and they're doing all the hard work of ensuring the integration to the hardware is done well, right? Because that's actually another huge component that requires a lot of engineering effort. Shawn, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think where I was going with it, I think I really, really like the Airbnb example because I think it's one that a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to and probably in the hospital as well. And so with Airbnb, I know that they have integrated, locks where every time a guest
Mm-hmm.
arrives or
Yeah.
is books a booking, they get a unique
Right.
code, and then that unique
Yep.
code's tied to them. So these codes that you'll generate, I'm guessing in VetSnap, will then sync to a connected smart lock, and then you'll
Yes.
have a log of when
Yes.
somebody opened the door
Yes.
or the container, and then that
Yes.
information will be shared back into your platform. It doesn't fix
Yes.
all of the issues, but it fixes a big one, right? It doesn't know exactly what drug was taken out of the controlled drug locker, um,
Yes.
but I would imagine it gives you a lot more visibility and a lot more transparency.
Right. It's about kind of like the chain of ownership almost into that safe space. I feel like I'm having a lot of puns here today, guys. But like within a safe or within somewhere, you don't know, you may not know what they took. They could certainly misrepresent what they took, but our software also will capture very easily which drug you're trying to access. We'll tend to know at least the subset of drugs that are inside that particular locker, and they'll be able to select. And then there's a way, obviously, we're going to pair it back up with their controlled logs, the actual records. So there's going to be a really tight and very easy to audit trail for access. So yeah, things could still happen, but man, it's going to be a lot easier. There's going to be a paper trail, and it's also easy to access it. We're not making it super difficult to get access into those places.
So I want to pivot a little bit from that technology and kind of dip into your experience in the last year, because scaling from 100 customers to 1,000 is a significant jump. What did you
Yeah.
learn through that process, and what would you give an advice to someone in the startup that's scaling to follow what you've done to be successful at this?
Yeah, I think hiring really strategically. I mean, that sounds very obvious. I feel like I didn't contribute a lot to with that answer, but um, you want to think about what makes your product stand out. Is it the technology? Is it the service? For us, compliance, implementing the actual solution required a lot of understanding, not just of the rules that the DEA might have for our hospitals, but also how it fits within the flow of our hospitals. So we hired people, and I think I said this before, our secret sauce really is our crew, our people. Like 90, maybe 80%, because we hired more engineers recently. Like 80% of our company are veterinary technicians who have way more years of experience even than me in this space. And that's just paid off so much in ways I can't even explain. just trust me, you want to have some folks there. It's almost like the whole rule of you want to eat your own dog food, right? When you're doing development. Well, you have a whole team of folks that are eating your dog food all the time. They know what's going on. When they talk with your customers, they also know what the customers are going through. Our customers feel heard. It's just all kinds of goodness comes from that. And that's really just kind of helped the scale because that's the one thing, adaptability, right? Like you have folks that can help you adapt and grow. It's just been really key for us. The other thing is we learned to just like think a year and a half in advance, not super far in advance, but like a year and a half. Because every year we tend to like rethink about where we are, and I feel like we evolve almost every half a year. But as we're planning for any of our processes and our systems, we're always thinking about a year and a half in advance. So worst case scenario, we start looking at our systems, looking at our people, saying like, "Ooh, we need a change." We're not already run. We haven't already run out of runway. You know what I mean? We still have half a year left. So like, just really try to think a little bit more ahead and try to build processes that scale a little bit more than you think you need.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I've got a follow-on question for you, Ying, which is, down the same path. Building software is tricky. I recently was chatting with a colleague, and he said, "What do you really do as a CEO of a software company?" I said, "My role is kind of divided up into two parts, uh, part fortune teller and part speaking with people." And so I don't know if you
Yes,
agree with that, but as a
yes.
CEO of a software company, how do you tell the future? How do you decide what to build next? How do you prioritize your backlog? What does that process look like for you? And yeah, and I guess you've already agreed with me, so I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually really interesting. You said it's like part soothsayer and part communications, almost like communications officer talking and understanding your customer. I think for us, when it comes to scaling and thinking about where to focus, it's very easy. It's a very simple answer. It's very easy to get distracted, and it's very dangerous to get distracted. When we were younger, when we were in our first year, we didn't have any legacy issues, right? So the world was our oyster. We could do whatever we want. And now we're like 2+ years in. We have 1,000 hospitals that we might need to take care of on top of new products we want to launch, and it's quite challenging for us, and I can't speak for everybody, is you pick 2 or 3 factors that you want to use to judge any new feature or any kind of feature request. For us, we kind of think about it as compliance, number one. If we see anything that's an opportunity for improvement and it significantly impacts our ability to further compliance or fix a compliance issue, that has like a pretty high weighting in our system. The other is user feedback, right? Like think about friction, lean operations. You think about how people are touching your software, how they're using your software in the hospital flow, where they're doing double entry, where they're spending a lot of wasted effort. So we think about what's not elegant or rough with our system, and we try to fix it that way. So that's like the second way to prioritize. And then the third, obviously, running a software company is complexity of execution, right? So like we do some basic t-shirt sizing with, it's myself. We're still very tight knit when it comes to product management. It's still myself and the CTO, right? So like we'll like get his input on like I think that's like a small, medium, or large t-shirt size effort. And between those three things, we try to like figure out where our next sprint should go. And that's kind of how we deal with the day to day, almost the operational improvements. The soothsayer part that you're talking about, seeing what's in the future, I feel like part of it is like making the future. You have to have an opinion. I mean, you're not telling the future as if the future is going to happen on its own. I think you're making the future happen, and you have to have conviction, right? Like clearly you can tell whether I'm right or wrong. I have a huge conviction in the fact that we must somehow solve people's problems. Where like larger solutions, the larger automatic dispensing machines, the vending machines that are inside our hospitals can't solve, right? Like they're too big, they're too hard to learn or too hard to manage, too expensive. We must solve that somehow. We must further our compliance mission that way. So yeah, it's a little bit of soothsaying and then a little bit of making the future happen.
So you mentioned that you dedicate a lot of time to webinars and to education of the customers. How much do you think that works as a marketing driver? And how much people are interested in the compliance and the webinars? What sort of attendance are you getting, and what topics do you guys cover?
Yeah, I think we do pretty well with webinars, whether they are CE or non-CE. Non-CE sometimes have slightly less attendance, but it's not always true. I think overall there's just a dearth of educational content when it comes to compliance. I know not just ourselves, but our competitors, everybody is focusing more on education. And I think that's a great way to get people interested in software and hardware. We also we dabble a little bit into the human space. There's a few human clients we serve totally as a, something of slight interest to us. We try to observe what they do there. And the awareness and knowledge around compliance for my human clients, the human clinics, is just so different compared to what I'm seeing, what I saw maybe 2 years ago in the veterinary space. And as we continue to provide educational content, I think that this is my personal feeling. People care more about compliance today than when we first started 2 years ago. And I also feel like corporations have that interest level has grown even faster than independent hospitals. And I think that's driven a lot of our deals. And it's a fantastic way to gain customers, whether you're in compliance or otherwise. I think education is the best way to grow your sales pipeline.
It's so fascinating because we're coming on the back of another episode that we just did last week in the equine space around compliance and regulatory issues, and I feel like you guys are so closely aligned, even though you're in a completely different area of veterinary medicine. A two-part question for you, Ying. First is, as you kind of got traction within some of the corporate groups that you're working with, has that kind of driven you guys to kind of go from one clinic to two clinic to now 30 or 100 clinics inside those accounts? Is that where a lot of your growth has been
Right.
coming from? And if so, and even if not, what advice would you have to other entrepreneurs trying to enter into the space?
Yeah. Our growth from corporates hasn't actually in the last 2 years hasn't been the majority driver of our growth. I'd say it's kind of actually materially so independent hospitals that we have grown with. However, corporates do help drive growth because it's almost like if you find the right corporate partner who values your product and puts it into all of their locations or most of their locations, and corporations are continuing to grow rapidly, you get basically the growth of the corporation, and it's a very fast way and very cost-effective way to continue to gain client count. With that said, I think to really gain a foothold into corporations, how we did it is we try to anticipate not just how the hospitals are using our products, but how can the corporate side of things partner with the hospitals with either the reporting, the data, or just the goodness of our product itself. How do we further their goals? And a lot of patience because corporations need to make these decisions with their boards sometimes, depending on the dollar size of the ticket. And then you have to go through review with their IT team, with their compliance team, with their insurance team. There's just a lot of folks you have to check the box on. So I want to say, like, don't give up if corporations don't immediately say, like, oh, we love your idea, and then they don't immediately just jump and throw all their hospitals onto your platform. Have some patience with them and really engage with them. It takes talking with a lot of people, but over time, I think if you believe in your product and it's a good product and you pay attention to corporates and you have met their needs, not just the hospitals, but their corporate operational needs, I think that's a great way to grow your client count. Corporations are extremely important to us, and I'd say this year it's going to make up a material part of our growth that we're expecting.
This is awesome, Yang. Congratulations on all the success to date. It's a great space to be in, just like a previous guest we had who was in the compliance space. I think it's a great motivator and a part of the sales process. When you are aligned with the law, with your product, it makes it easier to sell it. So congratulations on tapping into the right niche, right market. And as usual, we ask two questions at the end of our episode. The question number one: is there another book since the last time that you can recommend to us and our listeners to read on and to get inspiration like you did from?
I did not have time. I saw that question. I was like, I'm embarrassed. I did not have time to read a lot of books this year. I did have time to watch some movies while on the airplane or in between meetings. And if that's okay, for me, I'll just share the movie that's been very inspirational, if it's that. and it's Cloud Atlas, and it's just like a weird movie about many different generations of stories of people and how their lives intertwine. And it talks about basically how history doesn't really repeat itself, but history
We'll
rhymes.
take it.
You'll take it? Yeah.
We'll take it.
And the soundtrack's
Um,
great.
Sounds
Soundtrack's
great,
great.
Ying. So, last question. Another innovator, somebody in the space doing interesting things that you think we should have on the show.
Yeah, I don't know if last time I mentioned Dean. He's the CEO and founder of VetVet. If not, you should check him out. He's done some interesting stuff. You know, his product used to be in the text messaging, I think, automation space, and then I think it kind of like pivoted over to something new. So it might be interesting to see a entrepreneur in our space and how they pivoted like completely their business model. We only kind of did a slight pivot. We didn't completely change our business model. So he's interesting. And then Colleen Ellis is also a very interesting person to speak with. I've known her for quite a while. I think she's a senior executive at IAHPC. I don't know if I got the acronym right, but it's the International Animal kind of like Hospice and End of Life organization. And she's like a really fantastic person to just chat with. She's very interesting.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.